water bottle. If I looked at the search term like women's pink rubber coated insulated water bottle, like that's my exact product. Now, the more specific you get to the product, the more specific the search is, the lower your search volume is going to be. So what we always look to do on product launches is like we try and find the intersection between good search volume, and good to us is like maybe even a couple thousand depending on the budget, that also have really good relevancy to the product. Because what you're trying to do is you want to get in front of your exact shoppers. So example would be insulated water bottle is going to be really expensive and not super specific to my product. Like it's kind of specific, but not really specific. I'm trying to say like, okay, where can I start getting super specific to my product, but it's going to have enough search volume that I can get the sales volume that I need. So I would focus more on that versus that I would looking at only search volume. A bit of a technical answer here is we don't quote move them, meaning we're not going to pause the existing keywords. We're simply going to launch them in another match type. Again, make sure to keep the bids lower. Amazon actually, if you read their recommendations, they recommend keeping bids lower on broad and phrase match, even lower than the exact match. When we would launch those is honestly really dependent on performance of the account and availability of the budget. So if you launch a keyword in exact phrase and broad, so you have 50 keywords, right? And you launch them in exact phrase and broad, you technically have, 150 keywords that you've launched. And the potential of broad and phrase to spend could be quite high. So again, you just want to make sure it makes sense. It seems super simplistic, but if you are in a phase where you're struggling to control total ACoS and ACoS, to fix those two numbers, it really means that you have to lower down your ad spend with ideally little to no impact of the total sales or the ad sales in the case of ACoS. If you introduce a whole, again, those 50 keywords in exact phrase and broad, and those you probably need to test and optimize the bids, etc., you're introducing a lot of additional ad spend into the account. So you do want to be aware of that and be careful with that. So that's kind of a benchmark that we use. But overall, I would say, I don't know if I would have like a certain time frame or a frame which I would hold back on. It really is dependent on the performance of the account. Another good question, what's best bid strategy for phrase and exacts when you move? So again, we don't really move them. We would simply launch them in addition. We like to separate them by campaign as well. I think it gives us a little bit more control over, say, budgets for things. Now, as far as the bidding strategy, we're a super huge fan of using mainly dynamic down only. If it is a keyword that we want to ensure that we get impressions for, so for our launch keywords, for our main keywords, for anything we're trying to be aggressive with, we prefer a fixed bidding strategy. It's still going to be the same. It's still going to be pick highly relevant keywords. One other tip is pick keywords that fit within the budget of the account that you're launching. So for instance, if I have a couple $100 a day budget versus $50 a day budget, those launches are actually going to look a little bit different because I can't afford that many clicks on a $50 a day budget. Or if I had, a couple $100 or $1,000, I have a lot more room for clicks. So actually, you want budgets to play into your launch strategy. The other thing that you want to keep in mind, do not expect profitability on launch. This is a huge one. There's a lot of people that try and pull back and knee-jerk for profitability right out of the gate. That is not going to happen. The reason why it's not going to happen, and I'll tell you the numbers behind the numbers, is that ACoS is just going to be high on your product launches, and that is a function of two things. One, the aggressive cost per click you have to set to be able to get visibility in the beginning, and two, how low your product conversion rate is going to be, especially if you're launching without reviews. Those two things, once you start to be able to bring your cost per clicks down because you gain momentum or you're optimizing your bids, and then two, once your product conversion rate starts to increase because you're getting those reviews, maybe you're optimizing your listing a little bit more because you've learned more about your target market, that is going to help bring down your target ACoS. So those things, again, conversion rates are going to be low, high cost per clicks. That's actually like the nuts and bolts of why your ads are not profitable, and it's almost unreasonable to expect profitability in the beginning. And that's actually why, if you've ever had a product where you're like, no matter what I do, I cannot seem to bring the ACoS down, I'm struggling here, it's a function of that your conversion rate is remaining low and it's not improving, and your cost per clicks are remaining high and you're not able to improve them due to the market or something else. So again, I would still say pick highly relevant keywords, Also, make sure that whatever keywords that you have fits within your budget. Launch them. Aggressive, sponsored product, exact match, potentially sponsored brand video, exact match if you have the creative. Double down on that for a couple weeks and then start expanding. Hello, and welcome back to another Ask Junglr live podcast. So, hey, if you don't know who I am, my name is Elizabeth Greene. I'm from Junglr, so we're an Amazon ad agency on a mission to help growth-driven brands achieve exponential growth through PPC. And over the past 6 years, we worked with a variety of sellers from small scale to brands upwards of tens of thousands of SKUs across a wide variety of categories, which is definitely going to play into our answers here today. So everything from clothing to skincare, supplements, baby, everything in between. And so this kind of diverse range has really taught us that if you want to scale to 8 figures and beyond, it's more about just increasing the ad spend on your account. You really need to get strategic with your ad strategy, and it has to be as unique as your brand itself. So I'm super excited to help you guys get more out of your ads today. And with that, so yeah, you can always visit our resource page, Q&A, if you want to learn more about this segment, view all our past lives, get those updates. And we're also putting this in podcast form to make this easy listening for whoever would like to listen on the go. So if you're catching this in a replay, we welcome you as well. And with that, I am so stoked. So we have another special guest today. This is Mike Frekey. So we used to work at Perch. So he started out as a head of advertising and then quickly moved into marketing and operations, which we've gemmed out a lot because in that role, you did a lot of forecasting and pricing, which is something that our audience is always interested in and is a bit of a black box. But he since joined IG PPC as one of their partners. So super stoked to have him on today and definitely recommend. So if you want to check them out, it's igppc.com. Also, Mike is putting out a lot of really good content over on LinkedIn, which is I think where we connected originally. Definitely recommend. If you're not following Mike there, definitely do so. And we've also collaborated several times on. So if you're catching our YouTube, of course, you can catch this replay, which is what we're doing now. But we've had some really good conversations on, I think, market share as well as budgets, which are both really fun conversations. So Mike, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It's awesome to be here again.
Yeah, for sure. We're gonna have to make this a reoccurring thing because I always enjoy our conversations very much. So format of this, again, if this is your first time joining in, we welcome you. The way that this works is we're streaming live on several different channels, and wherever you are listening in from, whatever corner of the world, simply drop your Amazon advertising question into the chat. We'll bring that up, and then Mike and I will give you the best answer possible. So with that, we got some interesting ones. Have you delved into the new bulk file columns? I'm gonna bring this up because I myself have questions. Maybe you have the answers. So just was asking, the Amazon bulk report has a new column called negative keywords. But yeah, I wasn't seeing any data in there as well. Do you have any insights on what even that is?
Yeah, so I'm still waiting to hear back exactly what it is. I have some theories. So I posted about this last week when I first noticed this showing up in the bulk files. All of the API documentation only references the native language keyword fields for sponsored brand campaigns, not for sponsored product campaigns.
Interesting.
So the fact that it is empty in every single account I've checked in makes me wonder if maybe there was a glitch and this wasn't even actually meant to be in sponsored products and this is actually a sponsored brand feature. That's one potential theory I have. Otherwise, I do think that this is going to be more of I'm calling it, for international accounts when you are trying to run I can see it go one of two ways. Either you're running like German ads in German and you're trying to get a translation, or two, a situation where maybe you're running Canadian ads and some of the search volume is just auto-translated from French. And so that's where it'll show you the clicked keyword, but then the translation of somebody actually searched this in French, but it was auto-translated when it actually got to you. So that's where I'm expecting the data to be used.
Interesting. Yeah, they roll out these fun, like, what was the other one that it was in the partner page and then it rolled out to ad console, and I'm still not seeing any data on it. The one where it's like the different what is it, that like the watch time and a lot of really interesting data points for video ads, and then like it never populated, which is like, yeah, it's one of those things that would be really cool information if we had access to it. So hopefully they'll develop it. But I do know that the bulk file team is rapidly releasing new options, new toys, and there's, I think, some interesting stuff coming down the line. So we'll definitely have to keep an eye out on that for sure. Cool. Yeah. So again, format of this for anyone just joining in, which if you're just joining in, feel free to type in where you're joining in from. We'd love to know. And we'd also, that gives us a good clue that our audio and video are working. We assume it's working on our end, but we'd love to hear from you if there's any issues there. Andrew in with another, he's got a couple questions in here. This is in reference to a video I did with Stephen Pope and published on his channel. He said, hi, you and Stephen Pope talked about how isolating placement spend via low ad group bids and high top of search versus search bid sounds genius, but it doesn't actually work. I was hoping you can elaborate more on this. Mike, I can give you some context, and then I would love to hear your perspective on this. So, I get a lot of questions on placements. I think they're a really good tool, but I think in one of my lives, someone was asking a question of how do I make like only a certain placement have like all of the impressions on it, and I was kind of saying like, well, it's kind of like that, you know, what is it, that prayer or something. It's like, help me control the things that I can and let go of the things that I can't. I kind of feel that way about placement sometimes. And so the context of this was directly referencing the sort of tactic of setting a low bid and then trying to put a really high placement modifier to sort of force that those impressions to happen through that one specific placement. What I was saying in there as far as like quote doesn't work, I believe, if I'm remembering the context correctly, it was in reference to as a ranking strategy to get mostly top of search placements. At least my experience, and again, I'd love to hear your perspective on this, has been when you do that strategy, as far as entering in the majority of the ad auctions that are happening. So every time someone types in a search, an ad auction is triggered. To really get in sort of the majority of those auctions, at least from our observations, it's been that a higher bid tends to get you into more of those auctions, but a low bid sometimes can kind of make you not eligible for as many auctions. So therefore, that just really limits the amount of impressions that you get for that keyword. And if you're going after a ranking strategy where the goal is just to get maximize impressions, to maximize clicks, to maximize sales, then we've seen that strategy just doesn't drive the volume that you need to be able to really impact rankings. I don't know if you have a different perspective on that.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense to me. When I've done tests like this before, and I'll lead with, I don't like doing strategies where you're having, 400, 500% modifiers on any placement. I'll usually start out around like a 35 to 50% top of search modifier. And maybe that ramps up to 90 or 100, but rarely much further than that. When I've done these sorts of tests in the past, I have found that the high bid strategy does spend significantly more than the low bid high modifier strategy, typically because I'll just see a lot of the difference in spend going to product pages. So I would say probably to the sense of, I'm just looking for traffic and I'm looking to make sure that tied to these keywords, whether it's exactly on the top of search or just anywhere where Amazon is saying, no, this is into an auction tied to this keyword, then yeah, you're willing to show up on product pages tied to that keyword, you're significantly better off by just running with the higher bid. I typically try to avoid that, again, with a sense of my dream worlds, 50% of my traffic is always coming top of search. In my exact match keyword campaigns, honestly, without doing any sort of additional bid placement strategy, I'm usually naturally seeing 80 to 90% of my spend showing up, at least in the top of search, rest of search. Again, that's without the aggressive top of search multipliers.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I really like talking with you, because I'm like, okay, I have these observations and strategies and things that I've observed, but it's always nice to be correlated with somebody who's like really smart in the Amazon PPC space. That's been our observation. And we have a similar philosophy or surrounding placements as well. We prefer to do it mainly through the bids. Honestly, that strategy, low bid, high top of search, or high any placements, really was developed shortly after placements came out.
Yeah.
Which that was, gosh, how many years ago now? I remember when they came out, everybody was like, this is insane. Like, I think it was the one really big like update that gave us like a really interesting control lever that like nobody had access to before. And I remember back in the day, I've seen those campaigns work in terms of getting really good ACoS. Like, so if your goal is profitability, I have seen those types of campaigns work. My recommendations always on those are, I consider those sort of supplementary test campaigns. So if you have the bandwidth for it, if you have the ad spend for it, I'm not opposed to testing it. I've just found issues if that's like your core strategy, that it tends to sort of create issues and just not get you the volumes. Again, specifically for ranking purposes. Could be an outlying strategy. Yeah, we have very similar ones. Oh, this is a follow-up. Yeah, he was saying you mentioned the trends and data correlation. It's not working. Yeah, so hopefully, Andrew, that answered the why. If that brought up any follow-up questions, feel free to type it in the chat. Let us know. Cool. We have another questions Rick rolling through. Again, if you have any questions, the chat box is where to drop them. We'll bring them up and we'll get Mike's take on them. This question is, hey there, hope you're doing well. We are. At least I hope Mike is as well. I am. So he was saying the targeting the products where our keywords are ranked will affect keyword ranking, or would be a good strategy for a low ticket niche where CPC is really high. That's always a difficult one. High cost per clicks, low ticket products. Do you have a good take on that?
I try to avoid. Yeah, no, I love this question. I've come up with products that have I've worked with one, a dog nailed Dremel. Call it $10, $12 product, literally $4 CPCs for the top. And I can tell you, we were not converting 33% of the time to make that even break even. Unless we're talking about products that have a very high repeat rate, or even just a reasonable repeat rate, right? Like we're talking soaps, we're talking shampoos or toothpaste or anything with the idea that, no, I acquire a customer, I'm probably getting multiple purchases out of that customer for the rest of the year and hopefully keeping them longer. I don't love the strategy of going after those keywords. To a point, as a seller, you might not have a choice, because if your product catalog is the product catalog, I would try to see, is there any way you can make that product successful without trying to succeed on the highest volume, but also highest expense terms if your price is that low? Or do you have a basket building strategy in play? Right? Like I've worked with some products that the product catalog is so small, and no, these are not repeat items. And so you really need to make each interaction a net profit positive one for you. But if you have a product mix where you say, by introducing somebody to my brand, I am now able to upsell them on 2, 3, 4 other products that I'm selling. Now, all of a sudden, you can justify that sort of high cost per click expense. Elizabeth, what do you think?
Yeah, that's basically the way we go about. I mean, the problem, as you mentioned, is with high cost per clicks and a certain conversion rate, it's going to take you X amount of clicks to convert. If those clicks cost upwards of, I mean, in some crazy categories, they're equivalent to the product price, which is bananas. And so you're really, your goal, I mean, in these categories, to do something sustainable, really the way that I look at it would be, is there anywhere, sometimes that's product targeting, sometimes that's, you know, all this stuff that we're like, don't focus on that, but like low bid auto campaigns or something in these cases where you're like, I struggle to gain profitability. Sometimes you have to pivot outside of the normal strategies that just are going to be unprofitable for you and say, can I achieve sustainable CPCs somewhere, anywhere with any strategy? And that's kind of, that would be my focus for that product. And then, you know, depending on that answer, I mean, Mike had a really good thing about, you know, like repeat purchases. So in those cases, especially if you have like a subscribe and save product, sometimes you look outside of things just the ACoS. So tacos in those cases becomes a really, really good KPI for you, because those subscribe and saves come in, they are going to show up in your business reports as purchases. So if you zoom out, those organic or sort of repeat purchase sales are going to be factored into your total sales. And so if it's ad spend divided by total sales, you can kind of see that offset happening. Obviously, if you have data, you can pull showing like customer lifetime value. If you have a really good report for that, it's good to validate it there as well. But if you just want like a quick and dirty KPI to go after, again, repeat purchases or total ACoS becomes probably a pretty good call there. Sweet. All right. So we're nearing again. If you have, again, any Amazon ad questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But I'd be curious to pick your brain, Mike, if you've seen anything in particular. Everybody always wants to know what's working right now.
Ooh. So I think you know this about me. I love brand analytics. I am literally refreshing my reports every single week that they're available. This really has become my North Star of evaluating whether or not we're seeing large scale market share trends. And I've specifically been trying to identify what are the changes in the way customers are searching, right? Like I want to identify, is there a search volume change on any of our top value keywords? Because that can be a really good indicator that tells me, oh, I need to start priority. If I see total search volume changing in a way that I'm not expecting, right? Like a minus 30% on the, call it, I love to take top 10 or so volume driving keywords and use that to create a niche for myself. And then I'll see if one of those terms sees an unexpected, 30, 40% drop in search volume week over week or month over month. That can be a really good signal to me to say some sort of an autofill on Amazon's end has changed. Find out what the new term is, and then let's make sure that we're ramping up aggressively on that term.
I like it. And just to clarify, when you say brand analytics, are you looking at search query performance reports?
Yeah, that's
Got
key.
it. Got it. Yeah, that to look at, I mean, I know it was a while ago, so I'm sure you have more context on it. But I think it was this one, right? 6 ways to calculate market share. We definitely delved into SQP reports and how you're using them a lot. And then I'm going to plug you again, but I definitely recommend following Mike's content, because brand analytics, I think, is a really underused one, and you definitely put out a lot of good content on that. Here's a basic question someone asked. Again, I'm kind of out of my depth. I'm a PPC nerd, but outside of that, I have cursory knowledge. But you're saying if you're trying to start selling on Amazon, what have you seen from your brands? Are they mainly starting via a course, or are they just watching a lot of YouTube videos?
Yeah, I don't think I've worked with many, if any, people who have gone through like the whole course program type thing. I think one, there is so much great content for free out there. I've been on a handful of those shows, so I will speak to anything if I've been on it. Chances are there's going to be a lot of good nuggets in there for free. I do think that being able to connect, I'll say, again, obviously, a lot of what we talk about are going to be PPC specific things,
Mhm.
not necessarily seller specific things. It's possible that there's some, I would imagine there's a lot of just as good content out there for, hey, how am I sending inventory to FBA and what sort of, like, how should I be managing my SKUs, that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
I do think that being able to do like maybe even an informational interview with another seller could also be a good thing. There's a lot of great sellers out there, and people, a lot of those communities are always itching to say, oh, here's who I've talked to, here's what's worked for me. So I think you'll find a lot of friendly people who are happy to talk.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. From again, I this is like the main industry I've really gotten into, so I lack context to, maybe other things like Google ads or Facebook ads or, like other sorts of industries. But I've really found the Amazon seller sort of like, I don't know what you call it, congregation or this group of people is really, really open with a lot of stuff, and they're always open to share tactics and strategies and what, like you said, what they're doing, which I find really, really refreshing. Everybody will share pretty much anything up to their actual products. Then I knew not many people, you will be hard pressed to find somebody who shares their actual products for a good reason. Honestly, product selection is kind of the hardest, most difficult thing to do. The most important thing to get right, the hardest one to get right, and of course there's competition. But outside of that, I think you can find a lot of good information. I think where courses really excel is they have like gone through the pain to structure sort of the learning base. So with doing sort of like a self-learning track, if you don't think to watch a specific video on maybe, I don't know, negotiating with a manufacturer or something, and you run into some hiccups, like there is something to be said for courses, as far as thinking through all of the, hopefully, if it's a good course, if it's a good course, and I would vet that by one, just feedback from the group. Like if you're interested in a course, I would definitely, again, source from sellers. Hey, has anybody joined this? Have they found it valuable? What does the support look like? So the two things you're looking for, of course, is one, somebody who knows what the heck they're doing and have gone through all the pain points, and then they're not just like, oh, I sold one product once, like 5 years ago, and now I'm only doing coursework. You want somebody who knows what they're doing, ideally still active in selling, and then the actual support network around that course would be really important. There's a little bit cheaper, like sort of self-serve, things. We might just go through and watch it. But as you mentioned, things are always changing. There's always, unfortunately, new fees and new things to go through. And so having somebody who can like actively alert you to that, or it's good to find community, regardless if that's a course or, just a group of sellers that you connect with. I would say it's helpful. I got a question on tacos now. Here's a great one. Trying to lower tacos over the weekend. My sales dropped 25% by capping lowering portfolio budget. What ends up happening is I spend less, but my taco doesn't necessarily improve. Yeah, I'm sure we've all unfortunately seen this. You want to speak to maybe what's happening and how to get?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've noticed two things. I think there are a group of sellers who love to advertise their products to spend the same exact amount every single day. I'm going to speak to the second group of people, which is I want my ads to ride the wave of traffic. And so usually when you're experiencing this sort of, I'll call it weekday seasonality, you're already spending less. With the worse traffic that's converting worse, you're probably not spending as much on the weekends as is. And so when you're continuing to cap yourself by budget, well, you're also actually just turning off a lot of the traffic that you would otherwise be getting. So not only are you, yes, saving some money there, but you're also turning off sales at the same exact time. So that's why your tacos is probably not necessarily improving. If anything, I might look to see, can you do a similar type of strategy, but using bidding-based day parting as opposed to budget-based day parting, so you can actually spend less per click on the weekend sales. Because all of it really is just going to be that math problem. If your conversion rates are falling 20% over the weekend, but you're still paying the same exact amount per click, get fewer clicks, you're still going to be inefficient.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, I mean, we're struggling with an account with this now. We have a client who's saying, oh, I need to lower total costs, and then dictating. So what happens is, you go in, logical thing, okay? You're going to say, okay, this is my total sales right now. And if I'm at a 20% total cost and I really need to get that down to a 15, then what's 15% of these total sales? And then that dictates the budget. Logical, mathematical way to go about it. The problem that happens is, for that new budget to be able to work, you need to be able to spend that and still maintain the total sales volume that you have. If you're capping the budget and that lesser budget, through Mike's point, is limiting your visibility and limiting your sales, then sales, although spend goes down, sales may go down, unfortunately, at the same rate sometimes. And in those cases, you end up with lower sales in the same number, which is not great. So you have lower sales, the same profitability, which ends up being less because it's a percentage thing, and on down we go. So the worst thing that could happen in this scenario would be into kind of what I call, it's going to sound really scary, but honestly, because it is, it's like the death spiral, where you go, okay, so profitability is lower. Okay, so I need to lower ad spend even more, and then sales go down, and then it's this constant sort of shifting downwards. One thing that I'm a huge advocate for doing, to understand if limiting budget has the potential to significantly impact sales, even before adjusting for budgets, when you're doing that calculation, is calculating, what we've kind of been calling, but a lot of people call it like organic to ads ratio. We call it like ad sale percentage. It's definitely what all you do is you take your ad sales and you divide it by the total sales for the same date range. And you just say, what percentage of my total sales is coming from advertising? We had one client who was asking about sort of budget reductions, and we can move within whatever, but we always make sure that we make clients aware of potential impacts that happen through that. And we ran this calculation, and unfortunately it was due to like stock outs, and there had been a whole bunch of things that really had impacted ranking. So consequently, we were sort of in a relaunch rank phase. And so 80% of the total sales were coming from advertising. So at that point, if you restrict your advertising, well, then you're restricting, sort of that 80% total sales, which can kind of cause you to run into some issues with kind of the exact scenario you're doing this. So we talked about the problems to do it. Mike touched a little bit on how to go about lowering bids. And one really good way to do it would be to go through and optimize bids in lieu of just capping budgets. Another way you could go about this would be to go through, and instead of copying budgets on the entire account, you mentioned doing portfolio budgets. So that much. Do they have daily portfolio budgets? I think last I checked, it's monthly.
So they do technically. So you can do custom date ranges. And so if you set your custom date range to today and then refresh it every day, then you can do daily. I actually wanted to know, Joseph, feel free to just answer this to yourself. You don't have to put it in chat, but if you put it in chat, cool. I would be very curious to know if, when you do this budget capping strategy, do you see your cost per clicks go up? Because my theory would be that you do, because all you're effectively doing with this strategy is having your spend be more consolidated in the first half of your day, where we always know that cost per clicks are the highest because everybody's budgets refresh at the same time, which puts the majority of people, as many people as you could possibly get, actually in the ad auction at once in the first half of that day. So if anything, I think that might be hurting you, versus if you wanted to, again, maybe still you're using a probably more manual strategy, but keep your campaigns off via the budget cap from yesterday's budget, and then refresh them at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., something like that, where now all of a sudden you've skipped the most expensive time of the day. Again, if you're going to be having yourself be limited by budget and you're going to have yourself spend less money anyway, give that a try.
Yeah, that's a really great tactic. So if we were to give Joseph, we kind of talked about all the issues and why this might be happening. If we were to give him a strategy for lowering budgets, I can touch on how I would go about this first, and I'm sure you can add context here. But if I were to approach this kind of, we need to lower, goal is to decrease total A cost, which is obviously decreasing spend. Our first point of action is not always necessarily budgets, although we actually to plug some of our content again, actually we have a really good video on how to use budgets to increase profitability. So there's going to be some good nuggets and there, Joseph, I recommend going it through and watching that one. But I would go through also and look at where do I have waste in terms of ad spend. The two biggest ones for this are going to be adding negative keywords. So looking at search terms that have clicks with no sales, and then looking at any of your keyword targets that have a bunch of clicks and have no sales associated with it. That is ad spend that you can be very confident in removing from the account because it's not impacting, it's not contributing to sales growth anyways. So we kind of like go through and do that. And then depending on how much ad waste or like ad spend that removes for the account, we would go into like the next layer. So saying, okay, we didn't get enough ad spend eliminated there. Where can we look at things that have high amounts of spend? There's not a high amount of orders coming through this and they're unprofitable in terms of high A costs. That's one of our next. And so we kind of like work from the bottom up in terms of least efficient, least contributors to the orders. And then, you start trying to like weed out more and more. We find that approach, it takes more time to eliminate ad spend that way. It's not just a quick budget cap, but we found that tends to have the least impact on, kind of this whole sales problem that we found. What would be your approach if you had to give them a strategy? What would it be?
If I had to give them a strategy that I have high confidence would work for you, one, evaluate why exactly your sales are dropping. Is this purely a traffic play, or is this more, if anything, a conversion rate play? If it's a traffic play and the expectation is actually, oh, I'm still just spending the same amount of money per day, chances are, if anything, you're actually underspending during the week and the weekends aren't really your problem. So I might trying to tackle that from the perspective of how can I maximize my volume during the weekdays. If it's the second half of this, which is nope, your audience just simply converts at a worse rate, that's where I would be trying to make this a lower your cost per click while trying to still maintain as much of your traffic as possible, which is either doing, again, this is intra-week day parting at the bidding level, or do what I was recommending for your portfolio budgets. Just cap them for the second half of the day as opposed to the first half of the day, because you should see about a 10, maybe even 15% lower cost per click if you were to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate your point of cost per click. So I like us because that is a point that I definitely would have missed in this equation. But Joseph said things. Yes. So he is doing the portfolio date refresh, but he's not sure about the CPC. So yeah, that would definitely be something to investigate. Joseph said, I'm thinking of completely pausing for the weekend campaigns on any ASIN. Oh, he's his account with thousands of ASINs. So lots of moving pieces here that have a higher than average tacos. Can that help? I'm hoping Amazon lets us do day parting by lowering bids. We can't lower bids. We can increase bids. There's that whole rule in the account, but I don't know. I'm not a fan of the native rules yet, mostly because the interface is clunky and editing them is clunky. That's honestly my only problem with them. Otherwise, I think it's a really cool option, and I really hope they work on expanding that. Any thoughts on pausing the ASINs?
I would strongly say at the very least, do not pause any of your campaigns. If these are single ASIN campaigns, see if you can just cap their budgets at $1. I have found that Amazon will treat pausing versus a budget cap very differently. I don't know why. I don't necessarily think that it should matter, but it definitely does within Amazon's algorithms. So if you're going after the, hey, what if we just don't spend money approach? Don't spend money by doing a $1 budget, not by doing a turning off campaigns.
Yeah. Joseph, another point here, when you say ASINs, I'd be curious to know if these are variations as well.
Yeah.
Because there is some really interesting dynamics that could cause you to see like really crazy high A costs on variation ASINs when it might not necessarily be fully unprofitable if you rolled it up to say the parent ASIN level. And I'm happy to expand on some of our like reports and things that we use to look at that, but it has to do with the sales attribution and how ads attribute sales and how total and how sales would obviously show up in the business reports. Because I've seen that too. Like we have some clients with like a lot of variations on their ASINs, and they'll be like, oh, you know, look, this ASIN has like a 3% total A cost. This is amazing. And this other one has like a 15% A cost. Like, how can we, or total A cost, how can we shift that? And it's like, well, it actually has to do with how the products converts and the nature of the interface or like the interactions between child variations, which we can lead you to some really interesting and actually incorrect optimizations, which is really funky. I saw that firsthand, and there's a story I've shared a couple of times. But when it comes to how do you all navigate that when it comes to the whole variation thing? Because that's a like trying to get, because you want to get profitable on each SKU, but then like there's issues when it comes to ads and the SKUs. Do you roll it up to the parent ASIN? Do you look at all the above? How do you guys go about that?
Yeah. So I have had many a conversation with many a coworker where I just tell them, if you're looking at tacos, do not look at child performance ever. Mm-hmm. If someone comes to me with a question saying, Mike, our tacos is up 100% day over day, what's going on? Like, oh no. I'm like, are you looking at a child? Yeah. Don't. Just don't.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what, yeah, I guess that's the way that we do it. So when we're looking at the child ASINs, what we'll do is we'll simply evaluate sort of like what is the A cost of their performance strictly within the ad console. That tends to lead you to a little bit better of a decision, at least when it strictly comes to optimizing ads. Now you definitely want to look at total A costs overall. So we'll look at it on a parent ASIN level because you still want to be profitable. I mean, you don't want to just keep pushing them like, oh, it's fine. Like you definitely want to evaluate, but yeah. So you said most of them aren't variations. Okay, yeah. So definitely the $1 budget thing is going to work out for you then. And yeah, I would say it might be worth taking a look at the individual campaigns and sort of like turning off certain ones that are maybe a little bit more unprofitable. One thing, I don't know, did you go through this pain yourself when you were first doing it? Like when I was first getting into ads and optimizing, I would like sort, it's like, oh, I need to bring down spend. So I would sort by the thing that has the highest amount of spend on it. And typically, like even at a keyword level, I'd be like, okay, this is where most of my spend is going, i.e. if I need to lower spend, I should lower it on this particular target. And so I did. And then you go in the next day and it's like, all of a sudden A cost is like really high and you're like, what the heck? And it also has to do with the relationship that a lot of times the things that are sucking up the most spend are also what's driving your sales. Yeah. So that has really shaped a lot of my theory and thoughts around not just looking at ad spend contributions, but ad sale contributions as well. And sort of making sure that we're being a little bit more sensitive if something is driving a high amount of orders. That might also work for you here when it comes to making decisions at a campaign level, because it could be that through your budget limitations, you're capping a lot of the things that were driving that sales performance. Or maybe if you capped a lot of the things, but gave a little bit more leeway to the things that are driving sales, that might also be helpful.
I would add to that, Elizabeth. I think I've definitely made this mistake before and run into the issues where I am lowering bids on the keywords that are spending the most in a campaign, only to then see keywords that were effectively dormant because they were bid underneath the other item and everything was just funneling through the one keyword. Well, now all of a sudden I'm still spending the same and I'm still spending a very high cost per click, but I took my leading keyword that had maybe a $2 bid and cut it to $1.50. Yeah. Now everything that was bid at $1.60 that wasn't really spending before, now they're just going to town on it. So making sure that if you are viewing your term as saying like, this is still our hero keyword. This is still where we want to be spending. Also sort, my default is sort by sort by bid, high, low. And I'll say, if I know that I'm lowering a bid to X value, I want to find everything that is now bid above that X value and probably also bring it down.
Yeah, we use there is a forward pass tool that we built that essentially says, okay, if I have X amount in terms of my ACOS target, what would my average CPC have to be able to hit that target? And oftentimes, you know, if your CPC is high, it's going to be much lower than your averages. So if we're, you know, kind of like in this crunch, we have a whole bunch of untested keywords. One, maybe just skip the whole increase bids with low or no impressions workflow to just not keep pushing those up. But the second thing that we can do in terms of like to your point of going through saying like what doesn't have traffic and what has a high bid, because if you've been doing those optimizations of just pushing, you know, oh, it has no impressions, it had no impression, it could have no impressions because the budgets are capped. And so in those cases, like I've seen some crazy numbers in accounts, like crazy bids on things that have no impressions. You're like, why in the world is this there? It's because it was just, it got caught in a workflow and there was no ceiling and it just kept going. So you end up with like $20 bids or crazy things sometimes. And so to kind of give you a, okay, I need to lower it to what? Because sometimes I can feel a little bit like, oh, I don't know. Do I just like stick something in there? What we'll do is we'll like say, okay, what would this cost per click on average have to be given this product's conversion rate, given this product's average order value to hit our target ACOS? And then we'll just reset all the bids to that. So anything that we have no data on, we at least know it on average, it should be able to hit the targets if it popped off. And then you can just adjust from there. Got another one. We got a lot of placements. I'm getting a lot of questions on these. I need to do, maybe we could do it together. That would be interesting because we vibe on the same, thing about like a whole masterclass on placement percentages, because I don't know how many questions I get on placement percentages every single week. But the question is, what would be the best strategy to incorporate when there's two placements that have low ACOS as compared to the others? Would you increase the percentages on that placement?
I like this question a lot. I like to do placements a little bit differently for each client, depending on what we're actively trying to achieve. My core as a person likes to strive for equilibrium. So I just want to hit roughly the same ACOS on each placement level, and then use my bidding to get the entire campaign down to the ACOS that we want to be at. Obviously, that can be a really scary strategy when you say, in this example, I have one or two placements that are maybe hitting goal, and then I have a third placement that is going crazy. Well, I don't necessarily want to ramp up everything so that everything's going crazy. That is probably a very, very scary strategy to do and try to pull off. In that instance, it really just comes down to, am I comfortable with if I started to spend significantly more in this campaign at slightly worse efficiencies? If the answer to that is yes, then I do love the opportunity to say, hey, I can get more top of search traffic, so I want to be increasing my top of search modifier, because top of search is now my best ACOS placement. I will flag here, especially for top of search, check out your top of search impression shares at rough averages for either your keyword. If it's a very small campaign, you can actually look keyword by keyword, see where you actually have the opportunity to increase your top of search impression shares, because the last thing you want to do is take something that's maybe already serving 30-40% impression share and say, yeah, jack up those modifiers. You're not getting much out of that other than allowing Amazon to take more of your money.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. And actually another point that I think I love having guests on here. They add so much context to the conversation. Yeah, the other thing that we incorporate into this, and I'm a fan of, if you want to test it incrementally and smaller. As Mike kind of mentioned in the beginning, he's a fan of doing, like really small. I would even do, you could even do something much smaller, like a 10 or 20%. increases if you wanted to. You don't always have to go all or nothing. And in fact, I think a lot of times you hurt yourself by going all or nothing on placements. The other thing that we factor into just like our decision making in terms of placements is what is the actual structure and the match types in that particular campaign. So the way that placement percentages work is they are attached to the campaign. So all keyword targets, all ad groups, and consequently any potential search terms that are going to be triggered through those keywords and ad groups will have the placement percentage applied to them. Meaning if it's, say, a broad match, an auto campaign, it's not that, like, I'm not saying never put a placement percentage on a broad match or an auto or something that has, you know, the tendency to trigger just a ton of different searches. I'm saying that your potential poor performance could, like, you have a lot more things that can go wrong by doing really high placements there. So in those cases, if we are going to do placements, we would do, again, maybe that 10, 20, potentially 30%, depending on the performance. Because think of it, if you have an exact match, you're like, well, a single keyword, I'm only increasing placements for this one. So I can be super confident of what I'm doing. I know exactly where that increase in the bid is going to go, versus if I'm doing it like on 100 keyword broad match, I'm like 100 keywords can be triggered plus all of those exponential searches that are triggered through those broad match keywords. The amount of like bids that I'm increasing in all of these potential auctions is like, in some ways, almost infinite. So you just want to keep that in mind. So we're not saying no, we're saying keep in mind what the structure and the strategy is, and just make sure you're making good decisions on it, really. Oh, this is a great one. This is a really good one, because Rosanna says she needs help. So she's managing PPC and she's becoming a victim of analysis paralysis. So she's a daily budget of 110 different campaigns to manage. And she's trying to figure out what daily, weekly, and monthly analysis is enough to help solve that. So first off, I want to give you comfort, Rosanna. I don't know about Mike. Mike's smart, but even with everything I know and everything I'm doing, like, I still fall into this trap. Like, everything should be 100% perfect. And I'm not saying that to say that you can't get to a place where you're confident in what you're doing. I'm just saying, don't beat yourself up, I guess is my point. You're doing great. You've gotten to the level you have. So pat yourself on the back, and try not to stress, and hopefully we can offer some insights into that. Other things is I want to give you a sneak peek. I have a video that I'm going to be filming with Sean Smith, who's one of the OGs in the space. And we're actually going to be walking through, like, we're going to be outlining live step-by-step like structure of like, here's a checklist for you guys, and we'll release the checklist to everybody. So just know that that's coming, but I don't want to make you wait for that. So Mike, do you have any tips on what does a checklist look like?
Okay. So the checklist I'm looking at, one is, so you have a daily budget of $100, but the way this is, I'm reading this, you only have a daily budget of $10 per thing you want to do. And I'm assuming that with each of your campaigns, you're trying to do a different thing. That feels low to me. And so I might even say one of the reasons you might run into an issue trying to figure out what optimizations you want to be doing is because you probably have very low sample sizes in at least some of those campaigns. So I might try to ask myself the question, what am I trying to learn? And with the amount of budget I have, can I effectively learn this in a week, in a month? And so if the answer to those questions is no, not really, what I really need to see is give me 500 clicks. And on a 500 click sample size, I should have a really good understanding on whether or not this group of keywords have a good enough conversion rate for me. Is this something I want to continue doing? I think there's no shame in trying to, again, Elizabeth, you were talking about it earlier. You want to be doing your changes incrementally and on a small scale. You also want to be doing your tests on a small scale. Don't test everything all at once, but say we're going to test something, iterate it, and then find out, do we want to continue this or do we not want to continue this? Because that way, depending on who you're working with, chances are, if you put yourself in a position where you say, hey, our budget is $100 a day, and there's no wiggle room on it, well, what's the point of the testing? Because you're not going to be able to, like, when you want to test the next thing, you now have to stop spending on something that you tested before that is working in order to stick within the $100 budget. Alternatively, you say, hey, this is our core business. We maybe say it's $75 a day right now is core business, $25 a day for testing. And then the next test that works, we're going to keep doing that. And now we're going to have a new $25 a day for testing. And so now you're up to a $125 budget, and you're going to keep going from there. So I would look at that from the perspective of ask yourself the question, what am I trying to learn? From what are you trying to learn? How much data do you need? And then say no to everything else.
Yeah, no, that is a good point, because you're gonna, I'm sure if you're trying to figure this out, you're watching every single YouTube video, you're showing up here asking questions, you're consuming everything, which is fantastic and awesome, and keep doing that. But just know that a lot of the YouTube videos you watch, a lot of the things, they're showing you the best, the ultimate. They're going to say you need sponsored display and you must be running sponsor brands. If you're not running videos, you're absolutely losing out on this. And are you running headlines? Are you doing your brand defense campaigns? And you have a laundry list of campaigns that those videos have told you to set up, and you're looking at your ad budget and you're worried and you're stressed. And I would say, to Mike's point, I'm a huge advocate, and Mike is as well, of doing what makes sense within your budget parameters. And if you launch those huge laundry list of campaigns, you're not going to be able to have the budget to test. So Mike's point, 100% agree with that. Be fine with limiting yourself to those 10 campaigns. Just figure out if those campaigns work, or you might even limit yourself further. And actually enough data and enough clicks on a handful of keywords is going to be more beneficial to your brand, to the product, than trying to stretch out those clicks across a lot of different campaigns and running out. In terms of analysis and checklists, and we're nearing up against time, so I'm going to power through this, but I would focus on bid optimizations, and I would focus on, if you do at this point and this level of spend, you probably could get away with weekly bid optimizations. I would say max would be twice a week. If even that, because you want enough clicks to make sure if anything works. I'm sure it sounds like you're probably obsessing and checking this every single day. It's not bad to check it daily. You don't want to be hands off. But if you're saying like, I feel like weekly bid optimization is not enough, in this account with this much data, you should be super good there. And then the other thing to do is keep up with your negative keywords. Those two things, checking bids, making sure your search terms are performing for you, are like the most important than the base actions. From there, I would say potentially analyzing the budgets. Just as something running out that I have budget for and it's working for me, that would be a good optimization. Outside of that, I think if you get into the search term reports and you make sure that you're optimizing bids, I mean, that's pretty solid. I know that seems like a very short list, but I don't know. For me in this account, I would say that would be like, if I had to give you focus items, I would say that. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's spot on. If anything, again, on this sort of budget, I might even be looking to keep I would say keep a log of when you go to run your bid ops, and it's the once a week starting out point. Keep an eye on everything that you're not changing a bid on because you don't have enough data. And if you're seeing that's more of the campaigns than less, then maybe even slow it down to once every 2 weeks and really make sure that you have enough data to look at.
Yeah, definitely. Good points there. Joseph asks, so there's a daily ad report that can show each campaign spend by day. He was asking if it's helpful to compare to how it performed last year, and any tips for making sense of that report.
Ooh, that's a fun one.
Yeah.
I don't get as much value as I wish I could out of that sort of report, specifically because I'll have so many keywords inside of my campaigns, and the way that we'll optimize them, I'm not sure what exactly I was spending on that was the top last year within a converting. For me, like I have a harvesting structure where I call them my converting keywords campaigns. And as you can imagine, there tends to be a lot of volume that runs through converting keyword campaigns. But what that doesn't give you, Joseph, is the view on what were your top keywords last year versus your top keywords this year, and have you actually optimized yourself away from anything that was maybe very seasonal? And as you're out of season, conversion rates are worse. You lowered them down and you didn't ramp them back up. That is to say, if you can get more granular when looking year over year, that's what I would recommend doing. So instead of using the campaign spend day by day, using your search term reports for last year, if you have it available, and then repull them for this year and see where the differences are. If you don't, and I know there's limitations to what you can actually, how far back you can go with most of the reports.
Mm-hmm.
Campaigns where you can at least see, oh, I spent this much money in these campaigns, depending on your naming conventions, that might actually give you a lot of good info. So I would view that as if I cannot get search term data, then I at least want to get campaign data year over year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. One thing that we found very valuable when we start up for like all of our brands is we archive a search term report and a bulk file every single month, so we can go back and look. And then we'll also isolate if there's like tentpole days, so like Prime Day, Mother's Day, like around Christmas, if there's like a certain snapshot that we would like to get. Those ones, I think, and we also pull business reports as well. We found that very helpful. So that is great for our brands. One thing that we found very helpful, I've plugged them before, but we use KPOC. We really like the tool. We've been using it for over 2 years now, and their tool will pull things all the way down to the search term level and allow us, providing you've been hooked up to the tool for long enough, we can then go into the brands we've been managing for multiple years now. We can actually go through and compare things all the way down to like a search term level, what's working well, what's lurking before, and then even take actions within the tool, which we found helpful. Again, that's a whole software solution. So if you are using a software solution, oftentimes if they're archiving data for you, although we still keep manual backups, we can have a person on our team just go through and pull and archive those just in case, it's easier to use those, or if something goes down, heaven forbid, you still have access to that data, which we found helpful. Cool. All right. We got a couple more. Maybe we can speed run through this. This one, I think, is a pretty clear-cut answer. You're saying, you can schedule bid percentage increase for times a day with the highest conversion. Can we somehow decrease the bids and hours having the lowest conversion? I think this is talking about the native rules.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Answer would be no. Unfortunately, I don't know if they're ever going to give us decreases. Everybody wants decreases on placements. Everyone wants decreases in the bids. Everyone wants decreased rules in the budgets. The cynic in me says it's probably never going to happen. The idealistic person says, I really hope they listen. No, unfortunately, it's not possible. Although if you are using like a software tool, that should be present in most, sort of optimization tools if they have any sort of bid day parting available.
Elizabeth, I have a question for you. Spiraling off of that, I'm with you. I don't necessarily think we're going to get any form of negative rules.
Yeah, I wish.
I'm curious what you think. I'll say, what would you rather see Amazon roll out? A negative placement / negative bid adjustment in any sense, or still positive only, but device type? So being able to do mobile app versus desktop optimizations.
So the thing is, we don't actually get mobile data information, and we do have access to placements.
So this would be, which would you rather see Amazon roll out? So it actually gives you device type, or just give you placement level negatives?
My thought is device type would probably have the biggest impact on performance.
I think you're right.
So, and that's theorizing because I don't know what device. I mean, you can actually look at device type impressions and things in the business report. I do find that super interesting. You can't see the actual ad performance on those placements. You know what would be insane though? Placements on devices.
That would be great.
Because top of search mobile is way more valuable. I would happily overpay for a top of search mobile versus top of search desktop. It's maybe not as impactful as being able to have that. So time will tell. I mean, Walmart has it.
Yeah.
There's little things Walmart has that like Amazon is neglecting. So we hope maybe they'll take a cue from that.
I love it.
I know we're pretty much out of time. Do you have time for this last one?
Yeah.
We'll give him his answer and then we'll close it out. This is a really good question. So we're saying when adding new specialty campaigns around occasions such as Q4 or Prime Day, it's painful to pause them after the event because it continues to perform well. What would you say? Would you pause it? Would you slow it? How do you approach these things?
Yeah, so I love this question because I'm going to answer this by attacking the root of the question. I do not do specialty campaigns for Q4 or for like cyber holidays, Prime Days, whatever. In my mind, the search volume, with some exceptions, doesn't change around a Prime Day. People are searching in the same exact way they were. So if you're talking about keywords that you want to be showing up for, give yourself more budget, optimize your bids. If you have access to Marketing Stream, be checking your performance data intraday for those events. But I see no reason for why you should actually have a net new campaign for them. The only reason that I would say to have the net new campaigns are when you're talking about actual search behavior changes. So an example of this might be if you are selling a product, let's say you're selling fuzzy socks and we have Mother's Day coming up and you say, I want to have a limited budget specifically for Mother's Day gift type searches. Probably don't want to keep that campaign running after Mother's Day. Chances are probably not going to be all too successful on that keyword anyway, even around Mother's Day. That's still going to be a lower converting area for you than something just very product specific like fuzzy socks or even fuzzy socks for mom. But that's how I would be looking at it. Probably don't have those specific campaigns and make sure you're optimizing to the best of your capabilities, your existing ad spend, and only do that for hyper specific changes in search behavior, in which case I'm fine to turn those off. I do not want to be serving on gift terms outside of the gift holidays where conversion rates are the highest.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that premise. We got a question, I think it was a couple weeks back now. Someone saying like, "Hey, how do you go about like planning and prepping for Prime Day?" I'm like, actually, this question comes at a great time because you're in a great spot to be able to, Mike say, you're looking at your keywords, you're making sure that your campaigns, if there's restructuring you need to do, if there's campaigns that you want to launch and test, or certain keywords or search terms you want to capitalize on, like now is the time to get those campaigns in place so you can capitalize on them when the traffic hits. Because as Mike was mentioning, 100% agree with, consumer search behavior, meaning like how people are or how shoppers are, what keywords are typing in to search for your specific product, typically doesn't change. And so in those cases, and then I would just say, if you do have these campaigns and you're like, I don't want to pause it, I'm a fan of going with, if it's working, it's working, and just roll with it. There's a lot of things in this space that people feel like I have to, I need to, I should because someone said. But if you're looking at the data and you're going, this is great, and in fact, this is fine, I would go with what the data says over what anyone says, regardless if it's me or somebody else. I told you, like, this is the best way to do it. If the data is telling you different, go with that. Don't worry about what I'm saying. Cool. And with that, I appreciate all the questions. This has been a really great session. Rosanna says, thank you so much for a great session. It's been our pleasure. So as always, I definitely recommend you go and check out Mike on LinkedIn. If you're not following him there, he's putting out a ton of great content. If you're interested in learning more about IG PPC and all the cool stuff that they're doing, you can definitely, I assume the best way to contact is the website.
Yeah, I reach out via the website. All of the audits are going to go, our audit requests will go straight to me and Isaac. So happy to reach out. But also, if you want to just DM me on LinkedIn, I will be a little bit slower than if you go through the website, but I will still probably get to it. So
awesome. And with that, thank you so much. I really appreciate Mike joining on, and we look forward to next week. We're gonna be rolling out with more guests, so we have another special guest next week. So look forward to that announcement. And we will see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you all.